Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Liz, and for this video I'm going to throw together a whole bunch of fun Dollar Tree DIYs. I wanted to make a big mega video of all my favorite Dollar Tree DIYs that I've done within the last year. There's so many of them, and if you're on a budget with crafting, Dollar Tree is a great way to get some crafting supplies, do some DIYs, make yourself some home decor. So let's go ahead and jump into our first Dollar Tree DIY. I took two signs from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to take a large popsicle stick and I'm going to use some hot glue to attach these signs together. Now I'm going to flip it to the other side. I'm going to fill in those holes using some spackle from the Dollar Tree, and then once that's dry, I'm going to give this entire sign one good coat of my Waverly chalk paint in white. And then once that is all good and dry, I'm going to take this stencil that I picked up from the Dollar Tree and I am going to stencil this over 3/4 of the entire sign. So I just used some painter's tape to hold it down and then also to cover the parts that I didn't want accidentally stenciled on there. Since those patterns are pretty close to each other, I wanted to make sure that I didn't accidentally get those in there. So I just covered up everything that I didn't want stenciled, and then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in mineral and an old makeup brush because I didn't have any kind of stenciling brush at the moment. So I'm just going to stencil that all on there. Now I didn't want this perfect, so I was kind of messy with it, kind of used, more paint here and less paint there, and I just did this over 3/4 of the entire sign. I would just line my stencil back up with the previous part that I had stenciled and go at it again. And I did about 3 across per row. So in total, I want to say I did 9 of these stencils across the entire sign. And then I just left the bottom portion white. And it will make more sense in a minute why I left that white. I kind of wanted that color block look to it. And then I'm also going to add something else to this sign. So I picked up this shelf for $1.49 at my local Goodwill. I'm going to take the hardware off the back, just those sawtooth hangers that have some screws in them. I'm going to remove those, remove all the other stickers and gunk that's on it. And then I'm going to go in with my Waverly chalk paint in agave. I have been obsessed with this color lately, so I'm going to go through and paint this entire shelf in this color, making sure to get all the little nooks and crannies that are in there, and I just gave it one good coat of this. And then once I have it all painted, I'm going to take some hot glue and I am going to glue my shelf down to my sign right in the middle where the pattern ends and the white starts. And then I also took my staple gun to the back to secure my shelf to the sign even more. Now I'm going to add a wreath to this. I just took some of this burlap ribbon that I got from burlapfabric.com and I'm just going to hot glue the ribbon to the back of the sign, and that is it for this DIY.
And I can't help but feeling, just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? Forever. Forever, forever.
For this last one, I'm going to take the farmer's market calendar that is super popular from the Dollar Tree. I know these were really hard to find, but if you didn't know, the woman who illustrates all of these pictures has an Etsy shop where she has other prints that she puts up for sale, and I want to say she has these ones on there too. I'll link her Etsy page in the description box below, but I think it's absolutely fantastic. If you weren't able to find this calendar, you can go on and purchase our prints, and they are beautiful. So I'm going to take the home frame that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove everything from the back, and I'm going to take the glass in there and trace out this page from this calendar with the little creamery milk picture. I just thought this was so cute. So I'm just going to cut this down to size. I'll replace it into the frame, allow the backing back in, and then I'm going to take some extra little greenery pieces that I had. I'm just going to kind of cut them down and hot glue them in that top corner of the frame. And once I have all of those glued down, I'm going to take this Farmhouse ribbon that is also from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to make a simple shoelace bow out of it. I'll dovetail the ends, and then I'm just going to hot glue this right in the middle of that greenery. And that's it for this DIY. I think this turned out so cute. This was so simple to make. It probably took me 10 minutes, and I absolutely love this one. DIY, I grabbed one of Dollar Tree's tag signs. This one's in the Valentine's Day theme. You can find these pretty much every season. So all I'm going to do is remove that bow and the hanger at the top. I'm going to flip it onto its back side, and I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint and plaster, and I'm going to give this about 2 good coats. Once that is done, I'm going to take one of these color your own decor pieces from the Dollar Tree. This one is with the gnome and the truck, so it comes with 2 different pieces. All I'm going to do is use the truck portion of this one, and I'm going to use my Dixie Belle chalk paint in tea rose and in burlap. I'm going to mix these together. I did this in a previous video, and I loved the color that it made. So I just take a little bit of that tea rose, a little bit of that burlap, and mix it all together. I'm going to take that truck, and I'm going to give this 1 good coat. Once that is all drying, I'm going to take a little bit more of that tea rose color, and then I'm going to take a truffly chocolate color, and I'm just going to do a little dab of that. I'm going to mix it together just to make a kind of a shade darker than the previous color, and I'm going to use that to outline my truck, add more details on my truck, make it so it's not looking just like one flat color. I want details around the sides and the back, how a truck would be, you know, with the bed of the truck, all just those little details. I'm going to use that shade darker just to add, you know, all the details to it. And then I'm going to take some black acrylic paint. I'm going to put those on my wheels. I take some gray chalk paint, apply that to the little bumper at the bottom, just anything that I can do to give this a little bit more detail. Also, as a side note, ignore my giant head in this video. Apparently I need to get my eyes checked because I was just, you know, right down close to my projects. So you'll probably see my head in the way of a lot of projects today. So just ignore that little issue today. And then going along with a little bit more detail, I'm taking a white marker and just kind of adding lines around the sides, just adding more of the detail on the wheels, anywhere where I feel like it just could use a little bit of an extra pop. I take my white marker and go around and do that. Now I'm also going to take a popsicle stick, and I cut it down to the size of the truck, and this is just going to be kind of that bed portion of the truck. And I wanted to leave this in the natural wood color. I feel like the natural wood color plus the color of this truck just look so good together. So I left the popsicle stick as is. I just added a little bit of detail around it with some white and some black marker, kind of adding a little bit of that stitching pattern to it. And I did end up rounding out the sides as well. Now I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to go back to my tag sign and I'm going to draw faux shiplap lines on it. I just used a ruler and my mineral color chalk paint from Waverly, and I just added some faux shiplap lines to my tag sign. And I want these to be really faded, really distressed. So after that paint is dry, I'm going to take some sandpaper and go along those lines, really rough it up so they're not super prominent and they have a lot of distressing to it. I also go around all the edges of the tag sign to rough those up as well. Then I'm going to take these hearts that you can get at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take 9 of the smaller ones. I'm going to paint them in my Dixie Belle Tea Rose and then in my Waverly chalk paint in Ballet Slipper. I've been really loving the kind of muted tones for Valentine's Day. I love the pinks that aren't too bright, aren't too crazy, and they're almost kind of a neutral tone, if that makes any sense. So I painted those, and then I'm also going to take 5 of them in the natural wood tone as well. So I'm going to start by hot gluing my popsicle stick down to the back of my truck, and then I'm going to take my truck and hot glue that down to my tag. Next, I'm going to start hot gluing all of my hearts down to my sign. So I just kind of laid it out in this pattern and I just started hot gluing them all down to the sign and 3 of them down to my truck. Now, once I had those all glued down, I still felt like it was kind of missing something. So I decided to break out some of my Chocateur transfers. This is the Valentine's mini bundle. And I'm taking this one that says chocolate is my Valentine, but I'm just going to use the word Valentine. I center that on the bed of my truck, go over it with some gray chalk paste, and then I'm just going to remove the transfer. And that is it for the bed of the truck. I think that turned out really, really cute. And then I'm going to take some twine, loop it through the hole at the top, tie a knot to keep that secure. I'm going to add some wooden beads that I get from Amazon onto that twine. And then I'm also going to make a tassel to go at the end. So I just take some twine, wrap it around my hand about 15 times, and then I will cut that off from the bundle of twine, and then I will use that twine that's attached to the sign to tie around my loops of twine around my hand. You can see what I'm doing. I feel like I always I don't explain this very well, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing and understand what I'm trying to say. So once my loops are attached to my sign, I'm going to take another piece of twine, wrap it around the loops towards the top, and then I'm just going to wrap and wrap and wrap and then tie a double knot around the tassel. I will cut off the excess twine and then cut off the loops at the bottom, give it a little haircut so it's all nice and even, and that is it for this DIY. I think this one turned out super adorable. It's my favorite from today's video. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I grabbed one of these galvanized houses from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to take my Craft Smart paint in parchment, and with a Dollar Tree stencil brush, I'm just going to start dabbing up and down all over the house. I loved the texture that this gave, so I'm just going to go up and down all over the entire thing. And then I'm going to take some more of my antique wax, and I used this on the chimney, and I thought this looked really cute, the two contrasting colors. And I grabbed some popsicle sticks. These are just from the Dollar Tree. They're really small, and I'm going to take my miter shears that I got off of Amazon, and I'm going to start making little fence pieces. So I just adjust my miter shears to 45-degree angles and cut the angles out at the top, and then just cut the bottom parts flat. And I just made a whole bunch of these, made sure they were all the same size. And then I'm also going to just take one popsicle stick at full length to use for the back of my fence. Once I've got everything cut out, I'm going to take my Waverly Wax and Antique, and I'm just going to stain all of my pieces, front and back, and all the sides. Once those are dry, I am going to take another popsicle stick that's a bit larger. I cut it down to the size that I wanted, and then I just hot glued it to the front and in the middle of the house for my little door. And then I'm gonna start hot gluing my fence together. So I'll just put a little bit of hot glue on my main long popsicle stick, and then I'll start adding the little fence pieces. So I just tried to evenly space them out as best as I could, and I ended up with one too many, probably because I didn't space them out the right way. But in the end, I think it turned out really cute. Once those were all on there, I added some hot glue to the bottom of each little fence piece and hot glued it to the front of the stand on the house. And then I'm going to grab some wired vine ribbon, and I'm going to twist this into a circle for a wreath, just to get it in that wreath form. And then I'm going to hot glue that to the front of my house, and that's it for this DIY. One other thing that I thought of later that would be really, really cute is to add some little florals in where the fence is. I just think it would look really cute, like you got yourself a little garden. So I think this one was really, really fun. So for this one, I'm going to take a square sign from the Dollar Tree. This was during their Valentine's Day season. I'm going to take this picture from the exact same calendar that I've used in my previous two DIYs, and I'm just going to start cutting it down. So I didn't want this home word on the top because I do have another piece that says home that I'm going to use. I am going to take this Cricut straight edge tool ruler. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's really, really helpful. It's from Cricut, and it makes my life so much easier. So I just drew a straight line to get that home word off of there. You could also use an X-Acto knife. I don't know why I didn't do that in this instance, but I just cut that down. Now, this picture is not going to fit this sign completely for what I wanted to do with it. So I tried to find a piece of scrapbook paper that was going to match the best to the shiplap kind of look on the back of the calendar sign. So I found this scrapbook paper at Hobby Lobby that I had in my stash. I cut that down to the size that I need it, and now I'm going to start gluing everything down. So I'm just going to use my glue stick and apply that to the back of that Dollar Tree sign. And then I'm going to take my calendar portion, I'll glue that down, and then I'm going to take my scrapbook paper and I'm going to slightly overlap the calendar picture on top of that, and then I'll just go through with my X-Acto knife and cut out all of the excess paper that's around the sign, get in those little notches so that you can see them from the front. I think that's such a cute little detail that this sign has. So once I have all of my excess paper cut out, to blend the two pieces of paper in so they don't look like two separate pieces of paper, I'm going to take some of my mineral chalk paint from Waverly, and on a chip brush, I'm just going to start distressing everything. So I'm going to go over the scrapbook paper in this, I'll go over the calendar picture in this. I'm just trying my best to get these two pieces of paper to match. It's not going to matter too much because I am going to be covering up the majority of the bottom piece of this sign, so where that scrapbook paper is, but I just wanted it to look a little bit more natural, not so, you know, like I stuck two different pieces of paper on there. And then I'll go in with my black chalk paint as well, and I just kind of do some dabbing here and there, get some black splotches everywhere. Again, just trying to blend these two pieces together. So I felt like, you know, for it being two different pieces of paper, it looked pretty good in the end. So I'm just going to take a black paint marker. Now you could leave this the way that it is, but I wanted my words to really stand out. So I just traced over all of my lettering in this black paint marker. This is from Arteza. I'll link those down in the description box below. I absolutely love them, and these were super easy to work with. So I just go through and trace over all of my letters. Now I picked up this home sign from the Dollar Tree. It comes on a little stand. I removed the stand, and I'm going to paint this all in my Craftsmart paint in parchment, I believe. And I probably could have taken the greenery off to make it a little bit easier while painting, but I didn't want to mess it up. So I tried my best to just paint around it. And I did probably about 3 coats of this color parchment paint. Covering up everything is not the easiest, so it did take several coats. And then I just slid this back onto the stand that it was on originally. I'm going to apply hot glue all over the back of it and then towards the bottom where the stand is. And I'll put that on the bottom of my sign, push it all together, and that's it for this DIY. It can stand up on its own, and I just think this turned out really, really cute. So I'm going to start with 4 of the drawers. You're going to need 2 big ones and 2 small ones. I'm going to start by removing all of that metal hardware on all of the front, and I'm going to hot glue my 2 big drawers together. And then you're going to hot glue your 2 small drawers together. Now I wanted to be able to put a paint stir stick on the second layer, so I wanted to make sure when I hot glued my smaller boxes down to the bigger boxes that there was going to be enough room for that paint stir stick to sit right on top so it wouldn't go over the top of the 2 larger boxes. Hopefully that makes sense. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm just going to hot glue my set of 2 smaller boxes right to the top of my 2 larger boxes. So this is what it should look like when you have all those glued together. You'll just have that little lip of extra space at the top. And then I'm going to take some paint stir sticks and I'm going to measure out where I need to cut them. Now these stir sticks weren't big enough to go across the entire bottom portion of those boxes, so I did end up cutting them in half, and the middle is just going to meet right up the middle of those 2 boxes. I just took these to my garage and cut them. You should have 3 pieces at this point. I'm going to take my Waverly Wax and Antique and I'm going to use it like a stain and cover all 3 of my pieces in this. And then while those are drying, I'm going to take a chip brush and that same antique wax, and I'm just going to distress my piece so that it has that wax on it so that it matches the paint stir sticks. I wasn't worried about these being completely covered and completely matching. I actually like the fact that those pieces on the front are going to be a little bit different. I just think it's extra and fun. And then I'm just gonna hot glue down all of my paint stir sticks to the front of my boxes. The longer piece is gonna go onto the top portion and the 2 smaller pieces are gonna go onto the bottom portion. And then once those are all in place, I'm going to take all the hardware that I had taken off previously and I'm going to put them all back on, and I'm just going to screw them into my paint stir sticks. It was a little bit difficult to get them all in there, but I got them in there eventually, and I think that it turned out really, really cute. So this is what you should have so far. I am going to decorate this using some Spanish moss and some succulents. I used a mixture of succulents that I had from Walmart and Michael's. This one in particular I got from Walmart, and I think it's so So cute. I love how long it is, but in the end I decided not to use it because I do have these other smaller hanging succulents that I could use, and I wanted to keep my really long succulent for a different DIY that I may need that really long succulent piece for. So I just chopped up a couple of my succulents into smaller pieces, and I'm just going to start by adding my succulents into my boxes, just arranging them by however I think it looks good. I just eyeballed everything, played around with the arrangement until I was happy, and that's all you have to do for this DIY. I think this is so cute. I love the succulent boxes. I just think it's absolutely adorable. But I'm digging the succulents right now. It's summer here in Arizona, basically all year round, and you can never have too many succulents. I'm going to grab these two long signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. They have signs like this up basically all year round, so whatever ones that you have will definitely work. I'm going to go ahead and remove those hangers on the back, and then I just used a flathead screwdriver to get those staples out, but they basically just popped out as I was pulling them out from the ribbon. I'm going to grab some large popsicle sticks that I got from Walmart. I'm going to cut them in half to use as extra supports for the back of my sign. I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue to the edge of one of those signs, and then I'm going to push them together and make sure they are even on both ends. And then, like I said, for that extra support, I'm going to take those popsicle sticks and then I'm just going to start gluing my two signs together. I am also using a wood glue hot glue that you can find a link for in my description box below. This I find holds up way better than regular hot glue, so this is the kind that I always like to use. Once I've got my support on there, I'm going to flip it around and we are going to use the back side as the front side of our sign. I'm going to use my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I'm going to give my entire sign a good one coat. I wasn't too worried about covering it completely because this is going to be a rustic and distressed sign, so no need to do multiple coats for this sign. Now I'm going to grab 3 of these arrows that you can find at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use them as houses. So I'm just going to start by removing the jute hanger and the tags from these. And I'm going to go ahead and just paint the edges of all of those arrows just in that same white Waverly chalk paint, because you will be able to see the sides, and I wanted them to be covered up and not just have that natural wood. I wanted them to match with the back. So I did just take all 3 of those wood arrows and paint all the sides in white. Now for my sign, I'm going to take this big ruler and leveler that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use it to draw some faux shiplap lines on it. I just followed those same indentations that were in the sign already, and I just matched those up. I went over those pencil marks with my Waverly chalk paint in mineral just to give it a little bit more definition. And then I'm going to take a chip brush and go around all of the edges of my sign so it looks a little bit more weathered. And then whatever I have left on the brush, I'm going to drag it through the entire sign. I also went through and did little circles on them to kind of make it look like little knots here and there. I don't know if they exactly looked like that, but I thought it was cute. Once I have it all painted and the paint is dry, I'm going to take my sandpaper and just rough it up a little bit, go over those lines to soften them up. And then I'm going to take this home sign that you can also get from the Dollar Tree. I just cut off the jute hanger on there. And I have been loving the two-tone look on the word cutouts that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I've seen several people do it and I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. So I decided to do a two-tone with mine, and I'm going to just take my Waverly chalk paint in mineral. I love these two colors together. I think that the natural kind of wood look that the home sign already was with this mineral color, they just look so good together. It's not too much of a difference, but I love the way that it turned out. So once it's all painted, I'm just going to remove that painter's tape, and that's all you have to do for this. I think it is absolutely adorable. So I'm going to go back to my arrows. I'm going to take some scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby. Both of the scrapbook paper that I'll be using in this DIY is from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to trace out my arrows with that paper. I'm going to do 2 of the same paper and then 1 that is different. Basically, 2 of them are going to have a wood texture to them, and the third one is going to have a brick texture to it. I'm going to get all 3 of those arrows cut out. I'm just going to take a glue stick and I'm going to use that to attach my scrapbook paper to my little arrows, which are just gonna look like little houses. And I thought this scrapbook paper was so pretty. I love the herringbone pattern that it has to it, and I love the faux wood. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And then for the third one, it's this brick texture that I thought was so pretty as well. So you got your wood houses, you got your brick house. So I thought that these were so cute. And then I just went in with some sandpaper to all the edges of my houses to get all the excess paper off of them. Any of the paper that was hanging off all the edges, I just went back and forth, and the paper comes off really, really easy. And I also like that it gives it a little bit more of a distressed look to the paper. Next, I'm going to hot glue all my houses down to my sign. I'm just going to lay them out right in the middle. I just did the wood house and then with the brick house in the middle, and then the other wood house on the other side. And I tried to just line these up as even as I possibly could. And then I'm going to take that home sign and I'm just going to put that right on top of those little houses. And lastly, I'm going to take this ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to tie it in a simple little bow, add some hot glue, and attach that to my middle house at the very top. I'm going to dovetail the ends, and that is it for this home sign. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I love how neutral it is, and I'm so excited to add this to my home decor.
I watch you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking? I can't help but smile. Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on, I put my feet up, and we just sing along. And I can't help but feeling, just loving this.
I'm gonna take these feet, like I said, that I got from Hobby Lobby. Again, I don't know exactly if they're feet, but they were a really interesting design and I really liked it. So I'm just going to use my heat gun to get those stickers off the bottom. I'm going to take the hardware off of the front, and I'm going to start by just heavily distressing all of the sides of the box in my Craft Smart chalk paint and parchment. I didn't want to fully coat this with the paint. I just wanted it to be just a heavy distressing. I still wanted some of that wood grain to show through, and I also did the exact same thing with all 4 of the feet. I just distressed them so you could still see some of that natural wood peeking through. Now I'm going to take some scrapbook paper that I got in a pack from Hobby Lobby. I am going to trace out the top portion of it and get that all cut out. Once that's all cut out, I'm going to take a glue stick and run that over the whole top of my box Technically it's the bottom of the box, but I'm going to be using it as the top. I'm going to take that scrapbook paper and lay it right on top. And then I'm going to re-add my hardware back to the box. And then I waited for that glue stick to dry to the paper for a little while before I went in with some Mod Podge. I wanted to make sure that the top portion of this, the paper, wasn't gonna get all scratched up and damaged, so I wanted to use some Mod Podge to make sure that it was sealed in and it would be a bit more durable. And then I'm gonna take those feet and I'm gonna add some hot glue, and I just pushed them right up against the top where that little lip is on the feet. You can just add that right to the top of the edge of your box. I did that with all 4 of my feet, and that's it. I think this makes the most adorable riser. I love the greenery scrapbook paper on the top, and I just think that this turned out so adorable. Project, you're going to take 2 of these little wood pallets that you can get from the Dollar Tree in the Crafter's Square section. I just went in with some sandpaper in the beginning because they do have pretty rough edges with little pieces of wood sticking out here and there, so I tried to get it as smooth as I possibly could. And then I'm just going to hot glue those 2 pallets together. I'm going to use a popsicle stick and cut it down to size just to reinforce it so it's a little bit more sturdy. And then I'm going to take my white Waverly chalk paint and I'm going to paint the entire thing. And I did just do 1 coat on it. I wasn't too worried about it, again, having full coverage because it is going to be a rustic piece. So I just did 1 good coat. Once that is all dry, to distress it, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in mineral, and with a chip brush, I'm going to go over all of those sides, just doing a dry brushing technique, starting from the side and dragging it to the middle, and then I do go in between each of those slats as well to define those a little bit more and give it more dimension and distressing. So next I'm going to take some florals. You can use whatever florals you want. These are from a mixture of Hobby Lobby and Michaels. And I just started cutting off little pieces here and there and playing around with the arrangement. Once I got the arrangement that I liked, I'm going to take a piece of floral wire. I'm going to twist that wire around all of the stems. I wanted this to look like a little bouquet. So once I've got those all attached, I'm going to take some twine. I'm going to tie a double knot at the top to secure it all in place, and then I'm going to take that twine and I'm going to start twisting it around all of the stems. I go all the way to the bottom and then I do a second layer all the way to the top, and then once I get back to the top, I'm going to tie it in a double knot again, and then I am going to tie a little bow. Now, I knew just trying to hot glue this down to the sign, it wasn't going to work very well. So what I decided to do was take a piece of a popsicle stick and I hot glued it to where about the bow was on the stems of the bouquet. And I took an extra piece of twine and I just wrapped it around the front of the bouquet and then down through the slats of the palette. And then I tied the twine around that popsicle stick so that it would hold the bouquet in place.
Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? Forever.
You're gonna grab one of these bike wheel wreath forms that you can get from Dollar Tree. This was the first time that I had ever seen them and I had to pick one up, and I'm sure there have been plenty of these DIYs out there, but I absolutely love this style of wreath, so I knew I had to make one. So what I'm going to do is take that wreath form and this wooden knob that I got in a pack from Hobby Lobby, and then I'm going to use this metallic gold spray paint from Rust-Oleum. I took it out to my backyard, gave it all one good coat front and back, and then once it's all dry, I'm bringing it inside, and I have this bouquet of flowers that I purchased from Walmart, and I absolutely love these. When I saw them, I was just super excited about them. I bought 2 of them. I want to say they were about $5 or $6. I can't remember exactly, but the bouquet itself is big and you're getting a ton of really pretty flowers. So I knew I wanted to use these florals for this specific project. So I just went ahead and cut off all the stems that I knew I wanted to use on this wreath, and then left the rest of the flowers for a different project in the future. Now, to give me a little bit more area to work with, I took some floral foam and I cut it down into individual pieces, and I'm just pressing that where I'm going to have the florals be. So I'm just kind of putting those indents in there, and then I will go in with some hot glue to sort of attach the foam to the wreath itself. It's not super secure, and I did have to go back through over on top of it with hot glue as well. So that is one option if you don't want to try to figure out how to get all the florals to stick just to the metal wreath. It can be a little tricky, so that's just one thing that I did with this one. And then I like setting out all my florals before I go ahead and attach them, just so I can kind of get an idea of where I want to put them, get a good layout of it, see if I need more florals, and just try to get a feel of how I want it to look. So I just set everything out first, and then once I'm happy with it, I'm going to go ahead and start just assembling it. Because the floral foam is there, I was able to just stick my picks into the floral foam. If I needed a little bit more security, I could take my hot glue and hot glue the leaves down to the floral foam and to that wired wreath. Super easy, and I just messed with this until I got the look that I was going for. I think in the end it turned out absolutely adorable. Once all of my florals are in there, I'm just going to take this little knob, put some hot glue on the back, and then hot glue it right to the center of my wheel. And then to hang it, I just took some ribbon that I had, cut a piece off, and then just tied it around the top in a knot, cut off that excess part at the top, and that's it for this DIY. This has got to be my favorite one from this video. I absolutely love it. If it wasn't 115 degrees here in Arizona, I'd be hanging it on my front door, but it would all probably melt with the hot glue, so it may have to just stay hanging in my office for now. For this DIY, I'm going to grab one of these cutting boards that I found from the Dollar Tree. I thought this was so much fun, and I flipped it on its back and used my Waverly chalk paint and ballet slipper, and I gave this 2 good coats of paint. Now, you can always finish the back pieces of your DIY projects. I tend to not, because it just takes so much more time, and a lot of these are just for my YouTube channel, so I don't feel the need to do that. But if that is something that you'd like, just remove the back portion of the sign and paint it as well. Now I'm going to use this Chalk Couture transfer, the XOXO portion. I'm not going to use the little conversation bubble, but I am just going to use the letters XOXO on there, and I'm going to use my shimmering bright white on there, and I love the sparkle that it gives to this project. I just think it's so adorable. So all I do is squeegee my paste on top of my transfer, and then I'm just going to remove my transfer and wash it so I can use it for future projects. Now once that's dry, I'm going to take my twine and wrap it around the handle portion of my cutting board several times up to the top, and then just hot glue it in the back. And then I also tied a really simple shoelace bow with some twine, and I just hot glued that to the bottom of the handle. Now I'm going to take some of this Dollar Tree lace ribbon. I'm just going to hot glue it around the back of my cutting board. And then these paper flowers came from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to take 3 of them and hot glue them to the bottom of my cutting board. And that is it for this DIY. Look how cute this is, and I think it's just perfect color of pink for Valentine's Day. For this DIY, you're going to grab one of these plastic candy dishes that you can get at the Dollar Tree. I am also going to grab just a plastic cup. You're going to need some paint, some baking soda, and then I just wanted my texture of paint to be a little bit more gritty, so I'm going to take some sand that I got from Michael's. So I'm going to take my burlap Dixie Belle chalk paint. I'm going to pour a little bit of that into my red Solo cup. And then I'm going to add some of my baking soda to that. You want to add enough to where it's kind of a thick consistency. You don't want it too thick by any means, but you definitely don't want it runny. So if you can pick it up with your paintbrush and it's not dropping too quickly, that's perfect. And then I really just added the tiny amount of sand. I just wanted my texture to be really gritty and bumpy. So now I'm just going to paint my entire candy dish in this paint concoction that I've made. When I'm going around the edges, I'm doing a little swiping motion, but mostly kind of like a patting motion because I don't want the paint to slide everywhere. I'm just kind of doing up and down patting, if that makes sense. And I want the texture to be very gritty, very bumpy. I want this to look like some sort of stone. If that's what I was going for, hopefully that makes sense, but I just covered the entire thing, and then I did a second coat where I really just did patting up and down to make the texture really pull through, to make it look really bumpy and uneven. Like I said, just like a bumpy stone. Now I'm going to take some Spanish moss. I'm going to fill my planter with that, and then I have a whole bunch of succulents from all sorts of places. Dollar Tree, Michael's, I believe I have some from Hobby Lobby, and I just place them in there at random until I got it the way that I liked it, till it looked good to my eye. And then that's it. That's all you got to do for this. Set it on your counter next to your other home decor, and I think this looks so cute. Now, I had a completely different vision for this, and when I say vision, I mean my husband would call it a blonde moment. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm gonna blame it on being tired, and my mind just didn't put 2 and 2 together here, so I'm gonna take a smaller box and a bigger box. I somehow thought that dowels were going to work for this DIY. 4 dowels in the corners. My mind just did not think about the fact that the dowels were not going to fit onto the smaller box to the big box. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. So first I'm going to take some more of that scrapbook paper. I'm going to do the same thing like I did in the previous project, where I trace out the bottom of my box and cut it out. This scrapbook paper had this adorable flower cart on it, and so I wanted to place that on the top of my box. Again, just doing the same method, using a glue stick, applying my scrapbook paper, and then doing some Mod Podge on top. Now you can see I am going to start hot gluing my dowels to my box right in the bottom corners. You're going to see here me figuring out what the heck am I doing. This is not going to work. adding my top box to it and going, yeah, that does not fit. I tried everything to get it to fit. Again, do you ever just have those moments when you're doing something, you're in the groove, and then all of a sudden you're like, what the heck am I doing? It's not gonna work. What? I completely messed up. So in the end, I went and grabbed a piece of a table leg that I had purchased and used for a different project. I cut it down to the size that I wanted, and I added some clear Gorilla Glue and then some hot glue, and I'm going to hot glue this to the middle of my bigger box, and then I will hot glue it to the middle of my smaller box. And then I'm just going to fill it with some other decor pieces, some flowers from Solo Wood Flowers, and some other greenery, and just make it look all cute. And this is how it turned out. So for this next DIY, I grabbed one of these tag signs from the Dollar Tree. I always have a bunch of these in my stash because I think that they are so much fun to use for DIYs. And I love the little frame piece on the top. What I'm going to do is take that off using a flathead screwdriver. I just kind of popped it off that way. And then I'm going to use the back side of this sign. So I'm just going to start with my Waverly chalk paint. And I gave this about 2 light coats of paint. Now I am going to reattach that frame piece at the top to the top of the sign. I tried to do it with hot glue at first and it just made it really bumpy. It wasn't flush, I would say. So I used my gel super glue and added that to the back and then just pressed firmly down for about a minute, and that stuck on there really well. Now I have these fall window clings from the Dollar Tree that I just think these are probably my favorite window clings that I've ever seen from Dollar Tree. This middle one, Fall Breeze, Autumn Leaves. I just think it's so pretty. I love the colors and I just loved it. So I knew that I wanted to do a DIY with it. So I'm going to take that off there. I kind of put it where I wanted it without actually gluing it down yet. And I'm going to start with some burlap ribbon. I'm going to cut this down a little bit so that it fits at the top of my sign. I'm going to cut that down, and then I do fray the edges a little bit just by pulling out some of those strands of string on the sides. I'm going to take that and I'm going to hot glue it down to the back of each side so that the ribbon is at the top of my sign. I'm going to repeat these steps with more ribbon. So the second ribbon that I'm using is this really pretty gray buffalo check that I just think is gorgeous. I believe I got this from Michael's, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing, put it around the top. I'm just layering this ribbon right on top of the burlap one, and then I'm going to take this yellow ribbon. I actually think this is technically trim from Hobby Lobby, but I thought that it was so pretty and I loved the color, so I'm just going to do that one right on top of the buffalo check. And then I'm going to take my Mod Podge to attach my window cling to my sign. So I just started with some of the edges, and then when I laid it down and kind of got it where I wanted it, then I went back through, kind of lifted my window cling up, added some Mod Podge under there, and then I did go over my entire sign with more Mod Podge to make sure that that window cling was really stuck on there. And then lastly, I made a big raffia bow. I just took some raffia that I had from the Dollar Tree. I gathered several strands together, made 2 loops, and then just tied them together. And then that's all you have to do to make a really pretty raffia bow. I just kind of messed with the loops a little bit and the sizing of them, and then I cut off the tails to the length that I wanted, and then I'm just going to hot glue that right down to the top middle portion of my sign, right on top of the ribbon. And I just think that this adds the perfect finishing touch and I think this sign is absolutely adorable. You're going to take a stretched canvas that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I already went ahead and removed the canvas from the frame, and I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint and plaster, and I'm just going to lightly go over this. I mostly just did a heavy dry brushing technique to it just to give it that color of the plaster, but then still allow some of that natural wood to peek through. So I'm just going to do that over the entire frame. So once I've got that all dry, I'm going to take some scrapbook paper. I got this paper pack from Joann's. It has a really pretty blue shiplap design in there, and I'm going to take that. I am going to take my frame and trace around the back of it. I'm going to cut that paper out, and then I'm going to start hot gluing the paper to the back of my frame. And I mostly just did the corners when I did this. I wasn't worried about going around all of the sides because later on I will be stapling it down as well. I'm going to take that canvas that I removed from the frame earlier. I'm just going to trim down the sides, and then I'm going to attach that to the back as well. This is going to give it a nice finished look, and then as well it's going to give it a little bit more sturdiness so you can't just poke a hole through the back, so then your paper isn't getting ruined. So I'm just going to start by hot gluing it, and then I will use my staple gun that I got from Amazon, and I'm just going to use that to put some staples in each side just to give it a little bit more security so that it does not come apart from the hot glue. So I'm going to take one of these windmills that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I picked some of these up last year during that spring season. I actually had to go to a different state to find them. But I am going to remove the windmill from the welcome sign. I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in silver lining and elephant, and I'm going to start giving this a galvanized look. I just start with the shade elephant, and I'm just doing kind of a dabbing motion up and down just everywhere on that windmill. And then I'm going to take one of these natural sponges with the shade silver lining. I'm going to dab my sponge into the paint, dab off the majority of it, and then start going over the windmill with that as well. And then I will go back over it with the elephant on top of the silver lining color. So you just want to kind of go back and forth until you get the desired look. Now I'm going to take some super glue because hot glue really does not work with these metal windmills. It just is going to pop right off. So I just took some super glue to attach that to my sign. And then I just made this Love Lives Here design with my Cricut. I will leave a free printable down in the description box below if you're interested in it, or if you have a Cricut, I will also have a link to it in Design Space. So I'm just going to go through and weed out my design, and then again I'm going to use my Expressions Vinyl Clear Transfer Tape. The nice thing about this is it does come in a 6-inch and a 12-inch roll, so when you're doing smaller projects like this you're not wasting a ton of transfer tape, so that is another reason why I really like their transfer tape. So I'm just going to cut that out and then stick it right at the bottom of this sign, adhere the decal to the paper, and then I'm going to remove that transfer tape, and that is it for this super cute windmill sign.
I hope I be something that you won't let go. I'll be your high when you fall down low. I hope I be your end destination. You're far away and yet so close.
So for this one, I'm going to grab one of these wood hanging decor wood pieces that you can get from the Dollar Tree. This is the larger version that they have. They have a couple different sizes, but this is the biggest one. I'm just going to take one of those, cut that twine hanger off, and then I'm going to take some wood filler and fill in those holes at the top of that sign. After that is done, I'm going to take my Dixie Belle Vintage Duck Egg chalk paint, and I'm going to give this one good coat of paint. So you'll see me kind of pour some of this paint on using a squeeze bottle. I decided to buy some of these off of Amazon. I'll link them down below because for a lot of the chalk paint, it's not in the squeezy bottle. I personally like it in the squeezy bottle better. Is that the right term for it? That's what I'm going to call it. But that's just, it's just easier for me than like unscrewing the lid and it gets all messy. And so anyways, I put some of the paint in there. It's working out for me. If you're like me, I'll leave those linked in my description box. Like I said, I got them off Amazon and they're working pretty great. Once that is all dry, I'm going to take this Chalkator Cook, Eat, Clean, Repeat transfer. I am going to do the Cook, Eat, Repeat because who has time for cleaning? Not me. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to cut my transfer apart and I'm going to center it onto my sign. I'm just going to use the bright white chalk paste and a little squeegee to apply my paste to the transfer. And all you got to do is just peel up that transfer. And once that's all dry, I'm going to take my transfer that says repeat. I'm just going to line up that heart on the transfer and the heart that's already on the sign so they're all nice and even. And then I will apply my bright white chalk paste again to my transfer, just squeegee it on there and then remove the transfer, and then you have this nice crisp and clean words on your sign, which I love. Now I took these wooden spoons that I think I got these from Hobby Lobby. I got a pack of them. Somehow I missed recording me actually gluing them onto the sign. So I took 2 of those and then I used my Gorilla Gel super glue to adhere them to my sign. I just used 2 and kind of pointed the ends together. Now to finish the sign off, I'm going to take some twine on both sides of my sign and I just wrap it around about 3 times, tighten the back, add a little bit of hot glue to secure it and keep it in place. So I just do that on either side of my sign and that's all you got to do for this one. I thought this turned out super cute. It's really, really easy. This literally took me maybe 10 minutes tops to make this DIY. So quick and easy kitchen decor craft that I just think turned out super, super cute. And it's currently sitting in my kitchen on my counter and it's adorable. You're going to take one of these mason jar signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. Now, I tried my best to scrape off those flowers and leaves on there, but they just kind of melted off and then were sticking all weird, and I just could not get them all completely off and clean. So I decided to just use the back. I'm going to take this scrapbook paper that I got in a pack from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to trace out the mason jar on the back of that scrapbook paper, and then I am going to cut it out. And again, you don't have to be perfect when you're cutting this out. I tend to cut it out a little bit bigger so that I can go through with my sandpaper and get a nice clean edge that way. I'm going to use my glue stick again just to attach my scrapbook paper to the back of my mason jar. And then, like I said, just using that sandpaper technique to go around all the edges of that mason jar to get all the extra and excess piece of scrapbook paper off of your sign. Now I'm going to take this ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby as well. I'm just going to wrap that around the top portion of that mason jar, add some hot glue, and hot glue it in place. I'm going to take these rub-on transfers that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I am going to cut out that middle wreath there, and I searched everywhere for these. So when I finally found them at my Dollar Tree, I may have picked up like 4 sheets of this. So I love the watercolor look to it, so I had to grab it and use it in this project. So I just took that wreath, centered it where I wanted it, and then I just started rubbing all over the rub-on to get it nice and stuck on there. And then I just removed that clear sheet from the rub-on. I'm going to take some twine, wrap it around that ribbon that we put on before about twice. I'm going to tie a double knot and then cut off the excess twine, and then I'm going to make a twine bow just by wrapping it around my thumb and my pointer finger about 3 times, taking an excess piece of twine, tying a double knot in the middle, and then cutting off the excess on the tails. And that's all you have to do to make these super cute bows. I'm going to add some hot glue to it, add it to the middle of that twine and ribbon, cut off the excess, And then lastly, I just took a sticker that I had for the letter M and put it right in the middle of my wreath. And that is it for this adorable farmhouse mason jar.
Forever, I watch you as you sleep. You don't know I'm looking. With you everything's complete. Do you know how much I love you? I put your favorite song on just to wake you up.
For this DIY, I am going to grab one of these flower welcome signs that I picked up from the Dollar Tree last year during 4th of July season. Obviously, it's red, white, and blue, but we're going to change that up. I am going to take it apart a little bit because it was sticking up in a funny way and it wasn't laying down the way that I want it. So I took that first layer off of the flower, and then I'm going in with my mineral color chalk paint from Waverly, and I'm going to give the entire flower a good 2 coats of this paint. Now, to add some more color to it and give it a little bit more distressing and dimension, I'm going to take that agave color from Waverly, and I just mixed a little bit of that mineral color with it, and I'm going to go through and distress the flower. I'm mostly hitting the ends of all the petals, and then I'll kind of dry brush over it a little bit just to give it that little pop of color in there. I kind of wanted that agave color to look a little bit faded, and then I'm going to take some white just to give some more highlight to the flower, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the agave. I'm just going to hit the tops of those petals and then kind of drag my brush down so it has a little bit of distressing on each petal. Now, to just reattach that top portion of my flower, I just use some super glue and some hot glue for an immediate hold. And I just stuck that right down on top, and then I'm gonna grab one of these wood rounds. I picked up a 3-pack of these from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to paint this in my Waverly chalk paint in white. I didn't worry about painting all the way to the bottom because we are going to be covering that up. I'm going to take some of this ribbon that I also got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to cut it into 3 sections, going from smallest to largest. You just wanted to make sure that it's long enough so that you can wrap it around your round sign. So I'm just going to take my hot glue and hot glue the bottom portion down, making sure that everything is nice and even on the bottom. And then I'm going to take that second piece of my ribbon, I'm going to stack that on top of my first piece that I put down, just slightly overlapping it. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my third piece. I'm going to overlap that middle piece and then hot glue the excess around the back of the sign. Now I'm going to take that flower and I'm going to use some super glue and some hot glue again, and I'm going to glue that to the top portion of my sign. And then I'm going to pick up these florals that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I just cut off a couple pieces from the stems, and I'm just going to arrange those into our ribbon so it's a little pocket in there, and I'm going to put my flowers in there, just kind of get them how I want them. And then I'm going to take some extra pieces of greenery that I had, and I'm going to stick those in there as well, just to give it a little bit something else, some more green, some more texture. And that's it for this DIY. I think this turned out so cute. I love the little pocket idea. I think they are so fun, and you can switch those florals out anytime you want, so I really enjoyed this one.
You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high, even if the sky is falling down. Jumping from cliffs so high.
I took some of these tall candles that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I picked these up from there, and I'm going to cut them down to the size that I want them. My idea for this was to make some carrots. I've done this before, making some birchwood, and it turned out so cute, so I decided I had to make myself some carrots out of these. So I just cut them down, and now I'm going to go around making all sorts of lines and dents in a carrot. There's so much detail to them, so many lines, and they're very imperfect. So I just started hacking away at these candles. I made each end into a point so that it looked more like a carrot, and then I did little indents here and there, cutting out little chunks here and there. And then once I have those all cut the way that I want them, I'm going to take my truffle chalk paint from Waverly, and I'm going to give all 3 of my candles one coat of this. And after that's dried, I'm going to go back to my Waverly chalk paint and pumpkin, and I'm going to give my candles 2 coats of this. Now, the reason why I painted it in the brown first is because I wanted that brown to show up where I had made those indents, make it look a little bit more realistic looking with all the little grooves in there. After that, I cut out little holes at the top of my carrots, and I'm going to place this greenery in there just with some hot glue. I'm going to do this for all 3 carrots. Now with my 3rd carrot, I accidentally kind of fell apart at the top when I was trying to cut out a hole for it. So I did have to go back in after the greenery was glued down and paint the top of it orange again. So just a little mistake there, but I was able to fix it. And then after all 3 of those are done, I'm going to stack them together, take some twine and wrap it around all 3 of the carrots, tie a knot, and that's it for this DIY.
Dreams still yours if you want it. Enjoy the ride, 'cause those ups and those downs is what makes it worth the while. You will make it in time. I never left a stone unturned.
I'm going to take one of these cube drawers that you can get from the Dollar Tree as well as one of these stake signs from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to take my Dixie Belle paint in Vintage Duck Egg. You guys, I have been obsessed with this color for fall. If you haven't noticed in all of my recent videos, I am using this color. It's absolutely one of my favorites. I will always have Dixie Belle linked in my description box if you're interested. I am just obsessed with this color, so I use this on both pieces, on my stake sign and on my drawer. And I just used the outside portion of the drawer. I took out the middle and set that to side for a future project if I need to use it, but I'm just going to be using the outside portion for this DIY. Once my paint is all dry, I'm just going to add some hot glue to the bottom of my stake and put it to the back of my box. And I found this scrapbook paper from Michael's in a big paper pack, and I love how this scrapbook paper has little details on it like this tag. I thought this was so cute, so I decided to cut it out, and I'm going to use this on the stake sign. So first, I am going to make a bow using some twine. I'm just wrapping it around my pointer finger and my thumb, and I just wrap it around however many times that I want. Really just depends on how thick you want your bow to be. I'm going to take another piece and tie it around the middle, and then I'll just trim the tails to however long I want those to be. And I just started hot gluing my bow down to the middle of that sign, and then I slid the tag right underneath. I just thought that was absolutely adorable on there. And then I'm going to fill the inside with all sorts of florals. So I'm just going to start by hot gluing some foam down. I took some pics from Hobby Lobby. I took some little foam pumpkins from Hobby Lobby that came in a filler piece. Just all sorts of different kind of stuff. Some sunflowers from Joann's. And I just started putting these down inside my box, just arranging them really, again, however you want it to look. I always play with my arrangements a ton before I get it the way that I want it to look. I'm going to take some raffia, wrap that around my hand several times, cut off the loops at the top so that I can use that in my floral arrangement, use it as some filler. I'll put some styrofoam pumpkins on some skewer sticks, add those to my arrangement, and that's it for this one. I think this turned out super, super cute. One, I'm going to take one of these long signs from the Dollar Tree. You can get them basically all year round for all sorts of different seasons. Mine just happened to be from fall, and I'm going to flip it onto its backside, and I am going to paint that with my Waverly chalk paint in white. Now, I picked up these buckets from the Dollar Tree, and you'll notice that I cut one in half. That's the one that we're going to be using today. I had my husband use his rotary tool and it had a blade on it that could cut the bucket in half. I was way too afraid to use it, so I had him do that portion for me. So we just cut that bucket in half, and then I'm painting it with 2 coats of my Waverly chalk paint in agave. And then I'm just going to take some more of my white Waverly chalk paint and just distress and dry brush over that bucket, all over and even on the handle. Now I'm going to take these 2 picture frames that I also got from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove the little stands on the back. And now to be able to attach my bucket to my sign, I'm going to take some tumbling tower pieces and I'm just going to put those right against the sides of the bucket, and then I'm going to add some hot glue and attach it to my sign. Now I'm going to hot glue those frames down to my sign as well, one at the top and then one at the bottom. I did make sure to leave a little bit of room at the top of the bottom so that I could add some twine to it. Once I've got those on there, I'm going to take some twine and make myself a bow just by wrapping it around my fingers a couple of times, taking an extra piece of twine and wrapping it around the middle, and then I'm just going to hot glue that down to the front of my little bucket. Now I'm going to take some twine and wrap it around the top and bottom portion, just going around it probably about 4 or 5 times. And then I just tied it in the back, and then I'm going to add some pictures to the frames, and that's it for this DIY.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know if I will ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down,
you're gonna grab 2 of these hearts that you can get from the Dollar Tree. Now I absolutely hate all the glitter that comes on these pieces, so to make it a little bit less messy, I just decided to rip that paper all off these hearts. It was actually really easy. I ended up covering them up anyways, but the glitter gets absolutely everywhere, so I decided to take the paper off. Now I wanted my hearts to look the exact same, so I'm gonna take my Waverly chalk paint and plaster, and I'm just going to paint both of the edges of these. Now with the red one, I did have to go in with 2 coats just to get that red covered up. With the white one, I just went in with 1 light coat because really there wasn't too much of a difference from the white to the plaster. Once I have those all dry, I am going to take some scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby. These come just in the single sheets that you can get for 25 cents. And I'm just going to trace those hearts out onto the paper, and then I'm going to cut both of those hearts out. And then once I've got those cut out, I'm going to use a glue stick to attach my scrapbook paper to the hearts. And then once those are all the way dry, to get all those little bits and ends of excess scrapbook paper off of those hearts, I am just going to use some sandpaper, and I'm just going to do a downward motion on those hearts to get all the excess pieces of scrapbook paper off, and it leaves a really nice clean line. Now I'm going to begin attaching some twine to one of my hearts. I'm going to take these sticky dots that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I wanted this twine really tight on there, so I'm just going to add those to the back and then attach my twine to them. I'll wrap that twine around my heart twice, and then I'm going to tie a knot on the side. Next, I'm going to take this white lace ribbon that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to tie a simple bow just by taking 2 loops and tying them together. I'll adjust the loops till I get them the way that I like them, and then I'm going to take those pieces of twine that were left on the heart. I'm going to tie that into a little bow. And then I'm going to take that lace bow, add some hot glue, attach it to the back of the twine bow, and then I'll add some hot glue to the back of the lace bow and adhere it to my heart. I'm just going to cut off the excess ribbon and twine, and that's it for this heart. And then moving on to the other one, I'm going to take this burlap ribbon that you can get from burlapfabric.com. I'll have them linked in the description box below. I'm just going to wrap it around my heart and then hot glue it in the back. And then I'm going to take this super pretty sparkly rose gold ribbon that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to wrap it around my heart right on top of that burlap ribbon, and then I'm going to hot glue that down. And then for my last layer of ribbon, I'm going to take that same white lace. I'm going to tie a knot with it on the side of the heart. You don't necessarily need to do this. You can just hot glue it in the back. I had some different plans that didn't end up working out, so I just tied it in a knot and then cut off the excess pieces of ribbon. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing like I did before. I'm going to tie a little bow with this, just taking 2 loops, tying them in a knot, adjusting the loops, and then I'm going to hot glue that down to my heart right where I tied the knot. I'm just going to cut off that excess ribbon, and that is it for these 2 super cute little hearts. I absolutely love them. I love that they are a super neutral piece of decor with just a little pop of pink. If you aren't super into the reds and the pinks for Valentine's Day, I think that these are still a gorgeous neutral piece of decor. To take one of these wooden trucks that you can get from the Dollar Tree. They do have 2 pieces connected to each other, so it's like, you know, one of truck with the front and the back. That makes sense. But I liked this because I wanted to have the ability to put things inside the truck, so I think that this is really fun for this kind of DIY, or if you wanted, you know, to have 2 trucks, you could just split them apart and have 2 separate trucks. But I'm just going to go ahead and start painting my truck. I'm just going to use this mustardy color that I'm absolutely loving for fall. It's from Apple Barrel, and it's just one of my favorite colors for fall. So I'm going to paint the front on the front and the front on the back, so that when you're looking at it, you can see it's all finished. You don't see any unfinished wood. I'm going to use my antique wax for the bed portion of the truck, and then some black paint for the wheels. Now for the inside, because it doesn't have anywhere for me to put anything on inside the truck, I needed a little piece for the bed where I could insert flowers and all sorts of stuff. So I'm just going to take a long paint stir stick, and I just measured it down and cut it out so that I could hot glue it to the inside of the truck, so that I can put flowers and all sorts of stuff on there without them falling through. And then I'm just going to grab some florals that I picked up from Michael's, and I'm just going to start, you know, kind of putting everything together. I did hot glue a little piece of floral foam in there just so that it kind of had something a little extra to kind of stick to so that it was easier for me to put everything together. I put those florals in there. I just cut off a couple off of that pick. And then I'm also going to take some of these foam pumpkins. They're actually from Hobby Lobby. They come in a pack full of pine cones and these cute little pumpkins. I just put some skewer sticks on them and poked them down into the floral foam. And then to make it look a little bit more full, I'm going to take some raffia and wrap it around my hand a couple times and glue it all together at the bottom, and then cut those loops at the top, and then just hot glue those down into the truck. So, you know, you got that raffia grass in there, making it look a little bit more full inside, but I think this added a really cute touch to it. After I did that, that was it. I'm just loving the way that this turned out, and I just think it looks adorable. I'm going to take one of these calendar pictures that I picked up from the Dollar Tree in a calendar. I just ripped out one of the images from there, and I'm going to take these signs that I got from the Dollar Tree as well. I got them during the Valentine season, and I needed some boards that were going to fit this sign, and honestly it probably would have been so much easier to pick up some wood and cut the wood down, but I really didn't want to go anywhere. So I just measured out each piece that I needed. My idea was to measure them out to where the picture is showing kind of those shiplap lines on the picture itself. And I wanted the picture to be separated into 4 different pieces. So I'm going to cut out 4 pieces of this sign so that they match up with the shiplap lines of the picture. It all makes sense in a minute once you see it, but I am going to flip those pieces on the back once I've gotten them all down to the size that I needed. And I just used my craft knife and just scored it a bunch, and then I was able to kind of wiggle it back and forth until it snapped. Now, I was going to use Mod Podge for this, and I did on this piece, which was my mistake because the picture ended up really, really wrinkly on that part. So I should have just gone in with my glue stick to begin with. So that's what I'm going to do. I am going to glue my picture down to these slats, just right in a row. And once that is all attached, I'm going to take my craft knife and I'm going to go down those slats to cut each piece apart. So you will have 4 pieces of your picture. And I wanted this to look more like a shiplap, rustic kind of look. So that is why I did that. Now to attach them, but I made sure to leave a little bit of a gap in between each slat so they aren't fully together. And I'm just going to take some hot glue and a large popsicle stick, and I am going to secure them together that way. And then once those are secure, I'm going to take some large paint stir sticks that I got in a pack from Lowe's. I'm going to take my Craft Smart Stain in Brown and I'm going to stain all 4 pieces. Now I just measured around my sign and went out to the miter saw that I have in my garage and cut them down that way. And then I just took some hot glue and just started hot gluing them all in place, just around the sign. I'm going to take my Waverly Wax and Antique and I'm going to go in between all those slats a little bit on the paper. I wanted it to look really rustic and weathered, and I didn't want it to look like just paper that was cut. So I added that antique wax as just a finishing touch.
Wings to fly. Sometimes we're crashing down, but we get up and start from the ground. I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind. I will keep on holding.
So one, you're gonna grab one of these signs from the Dollar Tree. I like this one in particular because you can remove that frame from it. Then you're not having to take out your painter's tape and try to tape everything up, or you're not having to try to make your own frames. So that is why I like these signs. And then I was going to try to remove all the glitter from the front, and the paper was just kind of peeling off, so I went ahead and removed it all, and underneath wasn't really the texture that I was looking for, so I decided to just turn it around to the back and use the back side. I just removed those staples that were in the back, and I'm going to go in with my Waverly chalk paint in white. I'm going to go ahead and do one good coat of this. I didn't go all the way around the edges just because that frame was going to be covering that up. I wasn't too worried about getting all the edges completely covered. Now I cut out this decal for my Cricut design space. I just went into the images section and typed in the word tile and found this cute design. I just duplicated it 6 times and welded them all together to make one big piece. Now I'm just going to use this as a stencil. So I'm going to go through and weed it the opposite way, taking out all the pieces that you would normally leave in. Now I'm going to use my Expressions vinyl transfer tape. I always get questions about this whenever I use it, so it will be linked in the description box below. Now, a little trick that I like to do whenever I'm using my vinyl and I have a larger piece like this with so many different pieces to it, I want to make sure that I get this on my sign just right without messing up and having it stick down to it when I don't want it to. So I'm going to take a piece of wax paper. I'm going to lay my decal on top of that wax paper, leaving just a hair of that vinyl off of the wax paper so that there is just a little bit of stickiness to it. So when you get it where you want it, you can just stick that portion down, remove that wax paper, and then lay the rest of your decal on your sign. This allows you to move your decal around without it all sticking down. I like to be able to get it just where I want it before I stick everything down. Then once I got that on there, I am just going to remove that transfer tape and I am going to begin stenciling. I'm going to use this apple barrel paint called Admiral Blue, and that's what I'm going to use to go over my sign, and then use this stencil brush to do light layers all over the stencil. When you're stenciling like this, you want to make sure that you're doing up and down motions. Like I said, with just some light layers. I do go over it about twice because I don't want so much paint on there all at once to potentially leak or bleed underneath the stencil itself. So I just made sure to take my time, do those up and down dabbing motions, and then I will start removing that stencil. So I'm just going to take my weeding tool from my Cricut and I'm going to begin removing the vinyl from it. The paint does make the vinyl rip apart pretty easy, so this kind of is a lengthy process, but I think it's so satisfying to watch it all come together. So I just went through and used that weeding tool to peel off all the vinyl from my sign. Once I've got all my vinyl removed, I'm going to go ahead and glue that frame back down to my sign. I just took some wood glue, hot glue. I do get questions about this as well, so that is going to be linked in my description box as well. Any kind of tools or anything that I mention is typically linked down there if you want to take a look, if you're ever interested in what I'm using. And this is how this sign turned out. I think it is so cute. I've seen a lot of bathroom tile looking like this, or even kitchen backsplash tile, and I always think it's absolutely gorgeous. So that was my inspiration for this piece, and it is by far one of my favorites.
It's a known fact, yeah, I know that.
I'm going to take these 3 tile signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove the tile insert. They do come out fairly easily. Some of them were already loose and coming out anyways, so I just popped all of those right out. And I'm going to stack all 3 of these frames together. I'll put the tiles to the side and keep those, of course, for a later DIY sometime down the road. I will definitely be putting them back in my stash. And I'm just going to start hot gluing all 3 of these frames together. Now, I didn't want a big gluey mess on the outside of the frames, so I'm going to take some glue on the inside in the seam where those 2 frames meet, and I just piled some glue in there to keep them all nice and sturdy, and that's what I did for all 3 of my frames. And then for the bottom of this, I'm going to take one of those tiles and just hot glue it right back into place where it was. And then I wanted this piece to look like it was cement, so I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint elephant. I'm going to take some baking soda, and I did use quite a bit of baking soda because I really wanted this to have a lot of texture, and I wanted the paint to be really thick. So if you want that really thick kind of paint and texture to it, the more baking soda you add, it will be a thicker consistency. And I'm just going to go through and paint the entire piece in this color. I'm going to do about 2 coats of it, and I went about, I'd say maybe the first frame down on the inside, just so that you wouldn't see that natural wood color if you happen to be right next to it, or if whatever's inside it isn't covering it up. And after I get that piece painted, I'm gonna start kind of doing a galvanized-ish kind of look to it. Concrete isn't all just one flat color, so I wanted to mix in some different shades of gray. I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint and silver lining and this natural sponge, and I'm just going to start dabbing over the entire thing. Now, I go back and forth between this color and the elephant color until I got the way that I liked it. I mixed some more baking soda in with the silver lining just to get as much texture that I could and make it look cement-like. So really, this is all about playing around with your paints, doing a lot of dabbing, trading off between your light colors and your dark colors. And I just thought this was a lot of fun. There's no perfect way to do it. You can be as clean or as messy as you want and just have fun. I think this is the funnest thing about crafting, that it's really just your own creation and doing what you think looks good. So once I was satisfied with the way that it looked, I took a skewer stick between those lines to really carve out the paint that seeped in between each of the frames, just so that it had a little bit more detail and dimension and you could see those 3 separate pieces. And I just filled it with some of my succulents that I picked up from Michael's, and that's it for this DIY. For this DIY, I'm going to take one of these round wooden signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to start by cutting that tag off, cutting that twine off, and I'm going to paint it with 1 good coat of my Dixie Belle Paint and Tea Rose. You can see a theme here. I like my DIYs to all kind of match and correlate with one another, so I tend to use a lot of the same paint in the same videos, just because, you know, like I said, I like my DIYs to match each other, and I'm obsessed with this color right now for Valentine's Day. So once that's done drying, I'm going to take this wooden welcome cutout that actually came from Michael's during Halloween time, but I know that they sell a lot of these things throughout all the holidays. So I got a pack of 2 of them for $4.99, and I'm going to leave this in this plain wood color. Not going to change it. And then I'm going to take 3 of the hearts that came from a pack from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to paint those with my Waverly chalk paint and plaster. Next, I'm going to make a bow using a bunch of different ribbon that I had. The majority of them came from Dollar Tree, besides the burlap one, which I believe came from burlapfabrics.com. And I'm just going to cut 2 pieces of each ribbon and I'm going to cut them roughly all the same size, and then I'm just going to stack them all on top of each other, kind of doing a crisscross pattern to it. And I am going to just repeat that pattern until all of my pieces of ribbon are used up. And then to put it all together, I'm just going to take some twine and tie the twine around the middle of my bow, and then I'll wrap the twine around the middle several times just to give it a really chunky middle to it. You could also just wrap more ribbon around the middle if you wanted to, but I liked the look of the twine around the middle, so I just wrapped that around maybe about 8 times and then tied a double knot in the back. I'm also going to take some twine and loop it through the holes at the top to make myself a hanger for the sign, and then I'm going to start attaching all my pieces to the sign. So I just hot glued all of my hearts down at the bottom right in a straight line, and then I used some gel super glue and a mixture of hot glue to adhere my welcome to my sign, and I just put that towards the bottom. I wanted to make sure I left enough room for my bow at the top, and then I hot glued my bow right above that. Now I felt like it was still missing something. It looked a little bit too plain to me, so I took a black paint pen and I just did a little squiggly line and a dot around the entire circle. And then I also took that same paint pen around all the hearts and did a little stitching pattern around them just to give it a little bit more detail and to finish this DIY off. So that is all you got to do for this one. I think this one turned out super adorable. Let me know what other details that you would add to this DIY. I'm going to take 2 terracotta pots that I got from the Dollar Tree. Now this was the first time that I ever tried this technique. It didn't turn out perfectly, but I thought that I would show you to give you some inspiration where you could try this DIY on your own and give me some tips and tricks on how you have perfected it, because it wasn't the easiest thing to do as I thought it was going to be, but it was a lot more complicated. So I'm just going to paint 2 of my terracotta pots in Waverly White chalk paint and the other one in agave. I picked up a bag of rubber bands from the Dollar Tree and I just started wrapping those rubber bands all over the terracotta pots. There really wasn't a rhyme or a reason to how I did it. I just wanted them to be on there. I had some overlap and crisscross. My issue was getting them on there tight enough, but not too tight to the point where they would just kind of roll right off the pot. So they were a little bit loose, which then comes the issue that I had when painting over them because the rubber bands would move as I was painting. So I'm going to take my agave color on top of the white terracotta pot in hopes that I would have white lines around my terracotta pot. It semi-worked, but there were some places where it didn't turn out totally perfect. So if you have any ideas of what I could do to make this a lot cleaner looking, let me know, because that would be great.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for
For this DIY, I'm going to take one of these Dollar Tree signs. Now, I loved the background on this sign. The front piece was completely crooked, so I wanted to take that off, and I tried removing it as best as I can so I didn't ruin any of that background. I just thought the flowers were really pretty, so I wanted to leave it as it was. I took one of these round wood pieces that I got in a 6-pack from Walmart, and I just painted that with some Waverly chalk paint and plaster, and I just gave that one good coat. After that, I'm going to break out my Chalk Couture transfers again, and I have this Home Sweet Farm on there, and I'm just going to fuzz it up a little bit so it doesn't stick too much to my little sign, and I'm just going to put that on there. And then I just want to show you guys how little amount of chalk paste that you have to use to cover this entire thing. It covers so much with so little. I was completely shocked, and even with these little single packet uses, you're going to be able to use this so many times. I just put tape over the top so that I could continue using it. So I just thought this was so much fun. And after I remove that, I'm going to distress it a little bit. I just took some antique wax from Waverly. I went around all the edges, and then with a chip brush, I'm going to go over it really, really lightly, just back and forth, just giving it an overall kind of rustic, more dirty and worn kind of a look. And then all I'm gonna do after that is just hot glue it to the middle of my sign, and that's it for this DIY. I am going to take one of these baskets that you can pick up from the Dollar Tree. They came in all sorts of different colors, but I loved this peachy pink color. I just thought it was absolutely adorable. And I'm going to take a thicker piece of twine that I had, and I'm just going to start stringing it in and out of the holes starting at the bottom. I did go about a third of the way up doing this exact technique, where I would string it down and then back up over and over and over again until I got to the amount that I wanted. Like I said, I went probably about a third of the way up, and that's mostly just because that's all that the twine that I had for this particular twine. I wanted it to be a thicker twine. You could obviously double up the skinnier twine that you have, or maybe you like the skinnier twine look. It's really up to you, but I just did this over and over and over until all of my twine was gone. And then to finish it off, I just cut it off on the inside, tied a knot so that it wouldn't come undone. And then I'm going to take some burlap ribbon that I have from burlapfabric.com, and I'm going to cut out a piece that is long enough to go all the way around the middle of my basket. And for the back, I just folded over those end pieces just to give it kind of a cleaner look so it didn't have the cut off pieces showing. Hopefully that makes sense. And then to adhere, I just used my hot glue, attached one side of the ribbon down, and then added more hot glue on top of that, and added the other side of the ribbon on top of it. And I just made sure to pull tight so that the ribbon was nice and tight and secured on there. I also added a little dab of hot glue on the front just to make sure that everything was nice and secure. And then I'm going to grab some ribbon that I had. I picked this up from Walmart, I believe in the spring season. I thought this was really, really cute, and all I'm going to do is make a bow with it. So I'm going to cut out 2 strips of the ribbon that are the same length, and I'm going to hot glue them in a loop. Do that to each of them, and then I'm going to take another piece for the tails. I'm going to fold that over so that both of the right sides are showing, and then I'll just stack all of these on top of each other, add some twine in the middle, and wrap that twine around it several times, tying it in the back, and that gives you this super cute little bow. And then all I'm gonna do is hot glue that right to the middle. I added some greenery and florals to the basket and I hung it on my front door, which I think makes the perfect front door piece with your florals. It's absolutely adorable, and this is how it turned out. I grabbed this gold sparkly piggy bank from the Dollar Tree. I thought the frame on here was absolutely gorgeous. I'm gonna start by disassembling this little piggy bank. I took out the back, removed that paper, and then to get the wording off of the glass, I tried going in with my 100% acetone nail polish remover. That works typically for me in the past, but for this one, for whatever reason, it just was not wanting to come off. So I did end up using a razor blade to get those words off of the glass. I'm going to take the backing of that piggy bank, I'm going to trace it over a piece of scrapbook paper. This scrapbook paper came from a pack from years ago from some scrapbooking warehouse. So I've had it for a really long time and I wanted to get some use out of it. So I'm going to cut that out and then I'm going to use a glue stick to attach my scrapbook paper to the back of the sign. Now I'm gonna grab some florals. I just grabbed several from the Dollar Tree, from Walmart, and then I believe the pink flowers are from Michael's, I want to say. I just started playing around with which flowers and greenery that I wanted. Once I had those decided, I started messing around with the placement of the flowers on my sign. I always do this to make sure that I'm getting it exactly the way I want it before I start gluing everything down. So once I have an idea of how I want it to look, I'm gonna start attaching everything together. So these pink flowers were a little bit too widespread for me and I wanted to tie them together, so I just took some twine and tied them tightly together so that they weren't so spread out, and this winded up being perfect so that it would look like a little bouquet. So I'm going to start by hot gluing those pink flowers down right in the middle, and these red flowers are from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start hot gluing them all around the pink flowers. I thought this turned out so cute, and the fact that it looks like a little bouquet in the shadow box at the end is absolutely adorable in my opinion, so I was super happy with the way this turned out. I'm going to take those leaves that came with the pink flowers. I just added some hot glue to the middle and then push those up around the stem of the pink flowers. And then I'm going to take a piece of twine and just tie a little cute dainty bow with it. Just using a shoelace tie method, making two little bunny ears and tying them together. I'm going to add some hot glue to the bottom of those leaves, and then I'm going to stick my bow right on top, cut off the excess twine, insert my backing back into the shadow box, and that is it for this adorable bouquet shadow box.
I hope I'll be something that you won't let go. I'll be your high when you fall down low. I hope I'll be your end destination.
I'm going to take one of these Wi-Fi signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to pop off that little square on the front. I love tag signs, and I absolutely love that this was kind of a medium size. It wasn't like the big tags like they have in their home decor section. This is just like a good medium size, so I was really excited when I found these. Now I'm going to take another picture from that same exact calendar. I'm going to cut that one right out. And I'm going to kind of place it on the back of that tag sign and try to get an idea of where I need to cut it. Now I just started cutting it into a square. I'm not going to fully cut it to the exact tag size quite yet, just to cut it down and be able to go through, and I cut it out with an X-Acto knife. That's what I found works best for me. So I just used a glue stick, and I'm gonna glue that picture right down to the tag sign and get it exactly where I want it. And then I'm just gonna take my Cricut X-Acto knife and cut off all the excess pieces of calendar around all of the sides. I'll go through with my X-Acto knife and cut a hole where that hole is on the top of the tag. And then I'm gonna take some twine, I'll wrap it around the bottom portion of my sign, probably about 4 times, and then I'm gonna tie a double knot. And after I tied my double knot, I decided I wanted kind of a chunkier knot look to it, and I probably tied about 5 to 6 knots on top of that. And then all I'm gonna do after that is take some more twine. I'm gonna loop it around probably about 4 or 5 times, and I'm going to string it through the hole on the top of my tag, and then I'll tie it in a knot at the top, cut the loops, and cut the excess twine towards the top so it's all nice and even. And that's all you have to do for this DIY. I think this one turned out so cute, and it looks like such a cute sign. You never would have known that this was a calendar from the Dollar Tree. You're going to grab one of these wood houses that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I am going to separate the back from the frame. I'm going to take some of this scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to trace out the back of that house and cut out that scrapbook paper. I'm just going to use a glue stick to attach this paper to that house, and then I'm going to use some super glue to attach the frame back down to the sign. You could also use some hot glue, but I prefer this just because it's going to give it that nice flat, even level. I feel like a lot of times hot glue doesn't flatten all the way, so with things like this I prefer to use a super glue type glue. And then I'm gonna take one of these metal windmills that I actually got from Hobby Lobby for Christmas on clearance, and it's an ornament, so I thought these were really cute, and I'm gonna take that and just hot glue it down to the middle of my house. I'm just going to use some hot glue to reinforce it on the bottom, and then I'm gonna take this lavender that I picked up from Walmart, and I'm just gonna cut it down into little pieces, and I'm just gonna start hot gluing them down where I feel like it looks good. I kind of messed around with the placement of them a little bit, so I decided to put some around the base of that windmill where the bottom of the windmill meets the frame, and then I added some in the corners of the frame, and I just thought that this turned out so cute. I absolutely love the lavender florals from Walmart, and I love windmills, so this is one of my favorites.
Don't know what you do. Hold my hand, could you hold my hand? Look me in the eyes. You and me, yeah, that's all I need, and I'll be alright. I'll be right.
For this first DIY, I'm going to grab some caulk that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I'm also going to grab one of these metal baskets, metal planters that you can also get from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to start putting caulk all over the outside of my planter. You're going to want a pretty thick layer of this on your metal basket. So I'm just using my finger to kind of smooth it all out. I'll add more, smooth it out, and I'm going to do that over the entire outside of our planter, just making sure to get it as thick as I possibly can. I probably could have gone even a little bit more thick than I did, but this was the very first time that I tried this, so I was kind of just winging it and seeing what worked. So after I get all of that caulk on the entire outside of our planter, So I'm going to take the back of a paintbrush and I'm going to go in circular motions all over my planter and in the caulk. I wanted it to have a cool design to it. So this is what I came up with, and I'm just doing it randomly. I'm not doing it in any sort of pattern. So you can see I'm just taking that paintbrush and swirling it around. If the caulk started coming off of the planter, I just kind of mixed it around a little bit more to kind of cover up that tin. And I'm just going to do this same technique over the entire thing until it looks the way that I want it to. And then as you can see, as my paintbrush pulls up, it kind of pulls the caulk with it. So I just took the end of my paintbrush and kind of dabbed those down so I didn't have like little spikies all over my planter. And then I left that to dry overnight, and in the morning I took this metallic Rust-Oleum spray paint in gold, gave it a good couple of coats. I filled it with some lamb's ear from Walmart and some of my solowood flowers, and that is it for this DIY.
I watch you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking? And I can't help but smile. Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on. I put my feet up and we just sing along.
For this DIY, I took these eggs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I am going to paint all of them with one coat of white chalk paint, just to cover up as much as I could. I didn't want the colors to show through the twine that I'm going to be wrapping around it. Now I'm going to take some hot glue. I put it in the little hole that is at the bottom of these eggs. I'm going to stick my twine in there, and then I'm just going to start wrapping my twine around the egg, adding some hot glue, wrapping it around. Now I will say this was a very frustrating process. It's definitely a whole lot harder than it looks. So at some point I decided that the hot glue wasn't really working. The twine didn't want to stay in place, especially as you get towards the bottom. So what I end up doing is taking some of this double-sided sticky tape. I got it from the Dollar Tree. It's in the Crafter Square section, and I just kind of ran this all over the egg to make the whole entire egg sticky, and then I started wrapping the twine around it. Towards the bottom though, it was a huge pain in the butt, and the twine did not want to work with me. So I figured you're not gonna see the bottom anyways. So I just wrapped the twine around it and stuck it down. It's not pretty at all towards the bottom, but you're not gonna see it anyways. So now I'm going to take my Waverly Chalk paint in Pumpkin, and I'm going to paint all of these eggs with that paint. Just painting it as best as you can. Now this is one of those projects where I asked my husband, should I just forego this project and do something else? I'm glad that I didn't, because I thought it turned out really cute. So it was definitely a process trying to figure out exactly how to do this and make it look good. So I just took some more of this greenery and I'm just hot gluing it to the top of all of those eggs. And that'll be it for this DIY. In the end, I thought it turned out so cute, as frustrating as it was. I still think it turned out adorable.
Trying to find some love in this crazy world. I feel like I was never heard. All I wanted was to be loved. What if I lost touch? What if I'll never get it right?
For this first one, I'm going to take this Shadowbox sign that I got from Dollar Tree during the fall season. Obviously, it's just one that I had left over, but you can find signs like this at Dollar Tree all the time. I'm going to take my Rust-Oleum chalk paint in white, and I'm going to paint the inside and all the sides of this sign. I did about 2 coats on this. You really aren't going to see the inside of it too much, so I wasn't too worried about getting that perfect. Then I'm going to take this flower that I got from the Dollar Tree. Now I broke off the whole stem of it and realized after I purchased this that you can actually purchase these without the yardstick on it at all. So just pick up the flower if you can find that. So I'm going to give this one coat of my white chalk paint. I just wanted to do this kind of acting as a primer so I didn't have to do too many coats of my other color. And I made sure to carefully lift up each of those petals so that I could really get underneath all of them. Now I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in Agave, and that is what I'm going to use for this flower. I absolutely love this color. It's such a perfect mix between blue and green. So I'm just gonna go through and give this one coat of this color. I feel like because I did the white underneath, it helped. So I didn't have to do more than one coat of this paint. Now I wanted to give this flower some more dimension, so I'm going to take my Folk Art chalk paint in Sage and I'm going to dry brush around the flower petals, around the outside, and just kind of dragging that paint in, trying to hit all the little bumps and grooves of those petals. I just wanted a different pop of color in there just to give it, like I said, some more dimension so it didn't look so flat. I'm going to do that to all of the petals, and then after I've done that, I'm also going to take my white chalk paint and go over it with my white as well, just to give it a little bit more extra something, make it stand out a little bit more, and I feel like it's a lot more pleasing to the eye when you have something that has multiple colors in it, if that makes sense at all. So I'm going to take some tumbling tower blocks because I want to use this to be able to glue down my flower to it. I didn't want a whole bunch of glue around the outside of the flower and the frame, so I'm going to hot glue those down, and then I'm going to hot glue my flower down to the tumbling tower blocks, and that's it for this project.
Give me love, give me all your love, oh, 'cause I want you. No one else makes me feel this way.
I'm going to take some nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to unravel the entire thing. It comes in 3 pieces, so with one piece of nautical rope, you can unwind it and get 3 strands. I'm going to take a mason jar. I just had this left over in a pack that I think I picked up from Joann's last year, but you can find jars like this at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to start hot gluing that nautical rope all around my entire jar. So I just started at the bottom, and then I'm just going to wrap the nautical rope around and around and around until I get to the very top. I would have to hot glue probably the entire bottom portion of it, and then as I got around to the middle, I didn't have to use as much hot glue. I could just wrap it around and then hot glue the end. And then when I would come to ends where I needed to add more nautical rope, I would just hot glue both ends right together, and then I would continue wrapping my nautical rope around and around until I got to the very top. And then once I got to the very top, I did add another layer of nautical rope on top of the lip of the jar, so you weren't going to see the very edge of the top of the jar. And then I just took the remaining nautical rope and hot glued it down inside of the jar. Now I'm going to make some tassels using some white string. You can get string or yarn from the Dollar Tree. And I just cut out this little template, and I basically just measured out 3 inches, cut a little notch in the middle, and then use that as my template for my tassels. I just did it out of cardboard. So I just wrapped it around about 16 times, and then I will take some more string and wrap it around the top portion of my tassel, tie a double knot, and that's it. It's really easy to make these types of tassels, and I made 5 of these. And then once I've got all of them made, I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to cut all the loops and then give it a little haircut. Make sure the bottom of the tassels are all nice and even. And then I'm going to take another piece of string, and I am going to string all 5 of my tassels onto it. And then once those are all stringed on, I am going to wrap these around my jar, and I just tied a double knot in the back. Then I just messed with the arrangement a little bit, kind of tried to get them all evenly spaced. I'm going to flip my tassels over so that I can wrap some string around the jar multiple times. I just kind of wanted a messy look around the jar. Once I have it the way I like it, I tie another double knot to secure the string in place, and that's it for this DIY. I think it turned out really cute. I just added some florals that I have inside there, but really you could add whatever you wanted in this jar, and this is how it turned out.
I watch you as you sleep. You don't know I'm looking. With you everything's complete. Do you know how much I love you? I put your favorite song on just to wake you up. When I dance around, I can't help but feeling I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that
For this DIY, you are going to need 4 of these palettes that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to hot glue them into a square just like this, or I guess technically a rectangle, and then I'm going to grab one of these mini canvas boards that you can also get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use this scrapbook paper that I picked up in a pack from Michael's, and I'm just going to trace it out to the size that I need it to be, and then I'm just going to use a glue stick to glue it down to my canvas board. Now, once that is on there, I'm going to take some more of my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just going to begin distressing my sign. So I'm just going to go back and forth on the edges, kind of dragging my paintbrush towards the middle, and then I'm going to make some little distressed lines here and there throughout the middle of the sign. Once that is all dry, I'm going to take these rub-on transfers that you can get from the Dollar Tree, just these words or these letters, and I'm going to cut out the letters to spell Farm Fresh. And I just start at the end of each word, or the beginning of each one word and the end of another. You can see what I'm doing here. You can see it better than I'm explaining it, but I'm just lining these up as best as I possibly can, and then using a popsicle stick, I'm rubbing the letter down and then removing the clear plastic from the top. And then I grabbed some more rub-on transfers that you can find at the Dollar Tree, and I picked up these viney ones that I thought were really, really pretty, and I just grabbed 2 of them, and I'm going to put those down right below my words, and then rub those down on there and remove the plastic from the top as well. Now I am going to take some lamb's ear. This is a pick that I got from Walmart. You get 2 in a pack, and I believe it's $2, so you're paying $1 per pick. I'm going to wrap some twine around the stem and tie a double knot, and then I'm going to hot glue my sign down to the other side of my little palette sign, and then I'm going to hot glue my lamb's ear down, and then I made a twine bow just by looping it around my index finger and my thumb just as many times as I wanted for how thick I wanted my bow to be. And then once I have as many wrapped around my fingers as I want, I take an extra piece of twine, wrap it between my middle and my index finger, and tie a double knot, and then I just trim up the ends and hot glue it down to my lamb's ear. And that's it for this DIY. So simple. Yeah, I think this one is super cute. For this DIY, I'm going to take one of Dollar Tree's little wooden bunnies. I'm going to take some of this flower garden scrapbook paper that you can actually purchase off of my website. I'll link my website in the description box below. Just go to paper and you can find it there. I'm going to take this paper that I just thought was really cute, very springy. I love the colors of it. I'm going to trace that bunny out. And this was a little difficult because you've got that little ridge on the top of the bunny, so you can't, trace it perfectly on that side. You have to trace on the back side. I added some glue to the front and then added my bunny. And then I just went around with an X-Acto knife to get all the excess paper that was on it. Since when you trace it, it's going to be a lot bigger than the front of your bunny, if that makes sense. So I just went around with my X-Acto knife, got the excess off, and then to clean it up a little bit, I just took some sandpaper and went around the edges and made it look all nice and clean. And this is what it will look like when you're done. I kept the raw edge because I just liked those colors together. It looked good. Now I'm going to take this sign also from the Dollar Tree. It has a little frame stand on the back, which is perfect. I'm going to remove that whisk piece from it, and I'm going to take some sandpaper and sand it down as much to get all the excess glue off. I'm going to take my Dixie Belle paint in Spanish moss and give this one good coat. That's the thing. I get a lot of questions about why I use chalk paint and not acrylic paint. Chalk paint dries faster and it has way more coverage. So that is why I love using chalk paint for my DIYs. So I just give this, like I said, one good coat. And then I'm going to go back in with a ruler and I'm going to make some faux shiplap lines on this. I'm just taking a black pencil and just using my ruler as a guide in between each of those lines. Once I have all those lines drawn on there, I'm also going to take a white pencil and go over those lines. I just wanted a little bit of different dimension, kind of make it look a little bit more rustic. So I just overlap those lines, and then to go a next step further, I'm going to take a chip brush from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to take some white Waverly chalk paint and I'm going to dry brush over this entire sign. Now I'm going to take these alphabet tiles. I got these from Michael's and I'm going to use them to spell out the word Easter. I'll glue those down in a second, but I'm going to also take some raffia. I'm going to do this like I would make a twine bow. So I'm going to wrap it around my index finger and my thumb several times, and then I'm going to take an excess piece of raffia and tie it in the middle, just making a small bow. Now I also have this ribbon. I don't know if you'd call it ribbon or what exactly it is, but I thought this was really cute. It's from Hobby Lobby. It's this pink kind of champagne-y ribbon with leaves. I wish I knew the exact name of it, but I just did the exact same thing. Wrapped it around my fingers a couple times, tied a knot in the middle with some excess raffia. I did some more loops around the middle with the raffia too, just to kind of make the middle look bigger, if that makes sense. Kind of display that raffia a little bit more. Tied a double knot in the back, and then I did hot glue this bow to the raffia bow. Now I'm just going to hot glue everything down. I'm going to take my bunny, hot glue that down to my sign. I'll take my bows, hot glue that right underneath the bunny. And then for the tile letters, I didn't use hot glue. I used some super glue so it would lay flatter on my piece. And I just super glued all of my letters down, kind of going in a crooked direction each way. And that's it for this DIY. Super, super cute, really easy, and I think it's fun for Easter. For this DIY, I'm going to take 4 of these canvases that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I had already done a little DIY with one, so I'm just going to repaint it and repurpose it. I'm going to go ahead and take all the staples out of all 3 of those that need the staples and the canvases removed. You don't necessarily have to do this, but I wanted all my canvases to have a flat as possible back to them. I'm going to take these jumbo popsicle sticks that you can get from Walmart. I'm going to cut them down so they can fit really snugly in between all of those frames. My idea for this is to create a shutter-like frame, and so I want them to be really snug inside those frames so I can make them look like a shutter. So I'm going to stick 5 popsicle sticks into each of my frames. So I'm going to need 20 pieces, and I'm going to paint all of those with my Waverly chalk paint and plaster. I'm going to paint the front and the back, and then I'm also going to paint all of the frames that same color, front and back. I wanted it to have a nice clean finish, so it just looked nice and finished all around. After I have got all of those painted and everything is dry, I'm going to start assembling my shutter. So I'm just going to start by inserting those popsicle sticks at an angle. For this first one, I just added some hot glue to one of the long sides and then pushed it face down into the frame so that the back was nice and flat, and then I just re-secured that with some more hot glue around the edges where the popsicle stick meets the frame. And I'm just going to do that same thing to all of my popsicle sticks. I am going to have it on its back, and I'm going to put the glue against the popsicle stick and the frame where they meet up so that it is nice and secure that way. And I will just do that to all 4 of my frames, just securing it with some hot glue, making sure that the hot glue is always in the back so that when you have it on the front side, you're not going to see any of that glue. Now, once all my shutters are finished, I'm going to take some brown craft paper because I want the backs to look nice and finished. I didn't want you to be able to see all the glue on the back of these, so I'm just going to cut some craft paper out and I'm going to hot glue it to the back of each of my shutters just for that nice clean look. And then I'm going to take this little box that I got quite a while ago. I had painted it, I wasn't using it, and I am going to use that to glue all of my shutters together. So I just start by adding one shutter to the side, lining up one of the sides with the side of the box so it isn't going to be straight in the middle so that all of my shutter pieces can fit around this box. And then I just go through and attach each shutter to the box. It's pretty easy and self-explanatory. And then I did add some hot glue on the inside in between each piece so that it will just secure it that way as well. And then I'm just going to put some lavender that I got from Walmart in here, and that's it for this DIY.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know if
I grabbed this sign that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I decided to take the ribbon off the back to separate all 3 of these pieces. I wanted to make this into a little fence, so I just started off by removing all those staples. They popped out really easily, and then I just took some sandpaper and went over those holes where those staples were, and it basically filled it in on its own. And then to attach it all together, I'm just going to take some jumbo popsicle sticks and some hot glue, and I'm going to hot glue all 3 of those signs together. Now I'm going to take these little carrots that you can get from the Dollar Tree, came in an 8-pack, and I'm just going to start by filling in all 3 of those holes just with some spackle from the Dollar Tree. And while that dries, I'm going to paint my fence with some Rust-Oleum white chalk paint. I typically use Waverly chalk paint, but mine was all out and I have yet to go to the store. So this works just as well. It's not as thick as the Waverly chalk paint, but it still does a good job. So once I have that all painted white, I'm going to take some of my Waverly chalk paint in mineral, and I'm going to just emphasize those lines between each fence piece, and then I'm going to do a little bit of distressing to the fence around the edges, around the top, not too much, but I just wanted to give it a little extra something. Now I'm going to paint my carrot, and I'm going to use my Waverly chalk paint in pumpkin for all 3 of my carrots, and then for the top part I'm going to paint that in my Waverly chalk paint in celery, and I just did 1 coat for all of them. Once I have everything painted, I did go through and distress it a little bit with some sandpaper. I didn't want anything too distressed. I mostly just wanted to hit all those edges and make it look a little bit more weathered. And then once I have all of those finished, I'm going to start hot gluing my carrots down to the sign. So I glued them just right in a row. The middle one is going to have to sit on top of the other 2 because there wasn't enough room to have them spaced out evenly. But that's okay because I think it looks really cute overlapped like this. So I actually really liked how that turned out. And now I'm going to take this ribbon that I got from Joann's, and I'm just going to wrap it around the bottom of my sign and hot glue it down. And then I'll take some twine and wrap it around my sign a couple times at the bottom. And then I just tied a double knot, and that's it for this project. I thought this turned out so cute. I love the little fence and the carrots. I really, really, really liked this one.
Some balance in my life, but I never really put up a fight. Didn't follow my dreams, and now I'm losing sleep. What if
You're going to grab one of these little houses that you can pick up from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to take some of this scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby. I picked out this really pretty distressed wood piece, and I'm going to go ahead and use a glue stick and glue that right to the back of that little house. And it worked out perfectly because it was basically the same size of the house. I just had to do the angles of the roof. I just had to cut those parts off, and everything else was basically good to go. So I took those rub-on transfers that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I cut out the wreath in the middle. And then I'm also going to take these poster stickers that you can also get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use an H, an M, and an E, and I'm going to place that on my house. And then I'm going to take that wreath and I'm going to put that on the house, rub that down, rub the stickers down so they're all stuck on there. Now I'm going to take this ribbon that you can get from Hobby Lobby. I just tied a simple bow with it. I'm going to add some hot glue, glue it right to the top of the house. I'm going to cut off the excess ribbon from the sides, and that is it for this adorable home sign.
talking to you gave me butterflies. Then you took my hand, said let's leave now. Don't wanna be shy, I will let my guard down. Don't wanna be shy, I will let my guard down.
For this DIY, I'm going to take one of these tag Wi-Fi password signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. So I always flip it on its back to use the back as the front. I found this Martha Stewart paint in Pacific Moss at the Dollar Tree, and from the bottle I thought it looked really cute, and then when I started painting it on, well, I've got 3 babies, and it was kind of reminding me of, you know, newborn baby bowel movements. So I wasn't too thrilled with it, and it was really sheer. So I decided to just scratch that idea. I moved on to my Dixie Belle Spanish Moss chalk paint, and that looked way, way better than the Martha Stewart paint. So I just gave this one good coat of chalk paint. And after that was dry, I took a chip brush from the Dollar Tree, some Waverly chalk paint in white, and I just did a little bit of dry brushing all over my tag sign, just up and down motions. And once that was dry, to give it a little bit more distressing, I took some sandpaper, went around all the edges, and then went over the top just to rough it up even more. Now I'm going to take this Chalk Couture transfer. This is the March Club Couture transfer that if you're a Club Couture member, you will get in March. Look how stinking cute this is. It's Farmhouse themed, which I'm just absolutely loving. And if you didn't know, if you sign up for Club Couture in February, you get 5 free transfers. So just a little tip, if you want to score some freebies, sign up in February. It's only $20 a month. And I personally think it's really great to try out, get your feet wet. You get a transfer, 3 single paste packets to go along with it. And I think it's great to just see if you like it or not. So I just cut off a couple pieces from that transfer, the Farm Fresh, and I used my bright white chalk paste to do that. And now with this, a lot of times I will wax my surface before I put my transfers down on my projects. It typically helps me out a lot with uneven surfaces. With my transfers, it just applies better. This time I didn't let my wax dry all the way, so when I peeled it up, it removed a lot of the wax and the chalk paste from my sign. But one of my subscribers mentioned in my last video that something similar happened because I let it sit for too long and the chalk paste dried to my transfer. When I peeled it up, it was kind of spotty like this, and she said that she almost preferred it that way. And I debated back and forth on if I should redo it and try chalking over it again. But I decided, you know what? I like this too. It gives it more of a rustic, worn kind of look to it. So I just went with it. So thank you to that subscriber who mentioned maybe leaving it next time because I think it looks really great. Now I'm going to take some of this lavender that I got from the Dollar Tree. I took 3 pieces of it off of one pick and I just bunched them together, took some twine and wrapped it around the top and just wrapped and wrapped and wrapped until they were all nice and stuck together. I wanted that kind of almost like a upside down bouquet kind of look to it. So I just wrapped my twine around and hot glued the end down and then added another piece of twine for the hanger at the top and then hot glued my little bouquet to the top. And that's it for this DIY. I thought this turned out super, super cute. I love the touch of spring and the farmhouse and I am loving it. I'm going to start by taking one of these metal bottle caps that you can get at the Dollar Tree, as well as one of these candle holders that is also from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start by removing that twine from the top of that bottle cap, and then I'm going to take this Dixie Belle paint in Vintage Duck Egg. This color is beautiful. I had a subscriber recommend Dixie Belle to me, and so this video was the very first time that I'd ever tried it out, and already I can tell that I'm a little bit obsessed. I only had to paint this maybe 1.5 times. I painted it gave it one good full coat, and then just went through and touched everything up afterwards. The coverage on this is amazing. It's a little bit pricier, but I feel like you pay more for really good quality, which from what I can tell from what I've used is the case. So I'm loving it. I love this color. It was absolutely gorgeous. So I'm excited. If you use Dixie Belle, let me know what colors are your favorite. I might have to do a little more shopping to get some more paint. I can't find Waverly in my local Walmarts anymore, but I've had some amazing subscribers send me some antique wax from Waverly. Thank you guys so much. You guys are so sweet. I will be set for the next 5 years. But I am so appreciative of that. So thank you. So because I haven't been able to find Waverly in my stores, you know, I just kind of wanted to change things up a bit, see what else was out there, and, you know, try something new. So far I'm loving the Dixie Belle. So I'm just going to take the square side of my candle holder, which is technically meant to be the bottom, and I'm going to use some hot glue and super glue, and I'm just going to glue that right down to my bottle cap, and I'm just making a little tray. I thought this was really cute. I went back through and just touched up the paint where I had scratched it up a little bit. You could also do a clear coat sealer on here so that your paint doesn't get scratched off in any way when you're putting things on top of it. But I just think this turned out so adorable, and I am obsessed with this color. I found this print at the Dollar Tree, and I just thought this was so pretty, and it screamed spring. I loved all the colors that it had on it. So all I'm going to do is remove it from the frame. So I'm going to take an 8x10 stretch canvas that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and the first thing that I'm going to do is remove that stretch canvas. Now to do this, I'm just going to take a really small flathead screwdriver. I go underneath all of the staples that are in the back, and then I take some pliers and remove each of the staples. This is definitely the longer way to do it. You can just cut the canvas away, but I feel like this makes it just a little bit nicer and a little bit more finished. So I'm going to remove that canvas from the frame. I also debated painting the frame, and I decided that I really liked that natural wood look to it, so I ended up just leaving the frame as is. I'm going to cut down that canvas to make it a smaller square. I'm going to take that picture and I'm going to use some super glue to attach the canvas to the back of the print. And I'm doing that just to give it a little bit more stability so it's not just paper that's on the back of the frame. So once I've done that, I'm going to get my picture as centered as I possibly can on that frame, and then I'm going to use my staple gun to staple the canvas and the picture to the frame. I just did about 3 staples on each side, or a staple in each corner and then a staple on each side, and then I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm just going to remove any excess canvas, any excess picture from all the sides so you can't see it from the front, and that's all you got to do for this DIY. Super easy, super fast, and I just think this is so cute. I'm going to grab this love cutout from the Dollar Tree. Now, DIYing does not have to be crazy and hard and intimidating. You could do simple projects like this. All I'm going to do is take some of this scrapbook paper off of my website, moredecalanddecor.com. You can pick one of these up. It is double-sided as well. And I'm going to trace this piece onto my scrapbook paper, and I'm going to cut my scrapbook paper out. So like I said, this isn't hard, this isn't too complicated or crazy, this is a quick and easy project, and it's taking something a little bit more plain and turning it into something really cute and a perfect side piece for your Valentine's Day decor to go on a shelf or even on a counter or a table. I just think that this one is so much fun and super simple and easy to do. So all I do is cut it out using my scissors, and then for the O and the L and the E, I take my X-Acto knife and cut those middle portions out. Then I'm just going to use my glue stick to glue my paper onto my word cutout. You could use Mod Podge as well. I just am more comfortable using a glue stick. And then when you put your paper on there, sometimes you have a little bit of overhang. I like taking my X-Acto knife and going around it and kind of trimming it up so everything is nice and even and you don't have spots that are overhanging too much from your word cutout. Now I wanted to do something a little bit extra to give it a little bit more detail. I'm just taking my Waverly Wax and Antique and I'm just going along all the edges. I'm kind of giving it more of a worn look, more of a distressed look, so it doesn't look like just scrapbook paper on top of your word cutout. It's giving it a little extra distressing to make it look a little worn. And that's all you have to do for this DIY. Super, super easy, and I love the way that it turned out. This is so easy. I'm just gonna take one of these grapevine wreaths from the Dollar Tree. I'm gonna take these florals that I also got from the Dollar Tree. I searched everywhere for these last year and I couldn't find them, so when I found them I was really excited, and I'm just gonna make myself a simple wreath. I'm just gonna cut off each little branch from the stem and I'm just gonna start sliding those into the grapevine wreath, making sure to go in all the same direction. I tried switching it up a little bit so that not all the same pieces were right next to each other, filled it until I felt like it was full enough. I probably used about 3 or 4 bundles of these florals. So in total, this cost me about $5 or $6, and wreaths like this are so much more expensive at just a regular store, so making them is definitely what I like to do. Now I'm going to take some burlap ribbon that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I just folded one piece over in a loop, then I'm going to cut out a tail. I wanted this to have a really long tail, so I'm just going to cut those 2 pieces out. I'm going to lay the loop part on top of the tail, take some twine and tie them together, and then with that excess twine I'm going to wrap it around the wreath, tie it in the back. I'm going to dovetail the ends of the bow, and that's it for this wreath. So easy, and I think this is such a beautiful wreath for Easter. This just gives me all the Easter vibes with the purple and the yellows. I just think it's so cute.
I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind. I will keep on holding my head high, even if the sky is falling down.
I'm gonna take one of these house piggy banks that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I don't know where my footage went of it altogether, but all I did was take out the back. I used a scraper to remove those words from the glass, and then I am gonna take some flowers that I had left over, I believe from last fall. I'm just going to cut them all off those stems. I'm gonna cut them so that they're as flat as possible, and I'm just gonna start hot gluing those flowers to the back of that piggy bank, and I just filled that entire backing full of these flowers. And then once I did that, I'm gonna take this greenery that I got, I believe from Hobby Lobby. I just picked a couple pieces off, cut them into even smaller pieces, and then I just started pushing these all throughout the flowers, just kind of messed with the arrangement a little bit, placed them where I thought they needed a little bit more green, and then after that I'm just going to put that backing back into my little house, and then I just used a screwdriver just to get all the florals and everything on in there. And then I'm going to take some twine, I'm going to tie it in a double knot in the back, wrap it around the house a couple of times, and then tie a bow in the front. And that's it for this DIY. I thought it was really cute. I've been loving flowers in Shadowbox type decor, and so I think this turned out absolutely gorgeous.
jumping from cliffs so high, trusting our wings to fly. Sometimes we're crashing down, but we get up and start from the ground.
For this DIY, I'm going to take these two big foam bunnies that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I just wanted to do a small makeover, spruce them up a little bit. So I'm going to take some Waverly chalk paint and celery, and you guessed it, some more baking soda. I'm going to put that in there, mix it all up. This essentially gives your pieces a more ceramic or cement-like look, adds more texture to them. So that is what I'm going to do for my bunnies. I'm going to paint these in this concoction. And I did do about 3 coats. So I did 1 coat fully all over the bunny. My second coat was full all over the bunny. And for the third coat, I didn't wait completely for the second coat to dry. I took my brush and I just kind of stippled all over it. So I put my paintbrush in some paint and then kind of doing a dabbing up and down motion all over the bunnies. This really gave it some more texture to it, made it look more kind of ceramic or cement-like, and I love the outcome of it. I just think it looks really pretty. I think it looks really high-end. You'd have no idea that these were foam unless you picked them up or looked on the bottom, because I decided not to paint the bottom apparently. But I think these were so much fun, really cute to add to any shelf. And this one was super easy, only cost me $2. I'm going to take one of these signs that I got from the Dollar Tree. Now, I love these because they have the little wood frame around them that you can actually remove. So all I do is take a flathead screwdriver and I kind of pry in between each of the pieces and the backboard, and I just lift those frame pieces up. Now, I'm going to take some scrapbook paper that you can get off of my website. I just think this is so gorgeous, and I'm loving these colors for Valentine's Day and all the flowers. I just thought it was super pretty. So I'm just going to kind of lay it out, use my X-Acto knife, and trim off the excess scrapbook paper that I don't need for this sign. Now, all I did was use a good old glue stick to adhere my scrapbook paper to the back of the sign. Nothing too fancy or crazy, because those frame pieces are also going to help hold down the scrapbook paper as well on all of the edges. So once that is all on there, then I'm just going to take some hot glue and reattach my frame pieces to my sign. Now I'm going to take one of these metal envelopes that I also got from the Dollar Tree, and I just wanted to kind of change it up just a little bit, but nothing too crazy. So all I'm going to do is take my Waverly wax in antique and a cloth, kind of dab around the raised parts of the envelope, just trying to make it look a little bit different. And then I'm also going to take my Waverly chalk paint in Ballet Slipper, and I'm going to take it on a little brush and kind of dab it all along those raised pieces as well. Now, when I was doing this, I kind of changed my mind a little bit. I did end up taking a cloth and going over the entire thing with my Waverly wax, just kind of in a dabbing motion. And then I also took that Ballet Slipper color and went around the edges with just a dabbing motion with my brush, just to add a little bit more pink in there, and really just to make this piece pop off of the sign just a little bit more. And then once that was done and my paint is dry, I'm just going to take some hot glue and hot glue this to the center of my sign. Now, I still felt like there was something missing, so I'm going to take some of this lace ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use this to frame out my sign as well. You'll still be able to see part of that wood frame underneath it, but I think that adding the lace ribbon really just added that perfect extra touch. So all I'm going to do is take those strips that I've cut for around my sign, and I'm going to hot glue those down around the sign. And that is it for this DIY. You could add a really cute hanger to the back of it using some beads and some twine. You could also add a bow and some greenery. So many different ways that you could also finish this, but I just think this turned out so stinking cute. And that's it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you guys found some inspiration throughout all of these Dollar Tree DIYs. If you can't find some of the products, that's okay. Just take some inspiration, change it up a little bit, make it your own, use what you can find, and I bet it will just turn out gorgeous. So make sure that you guys subscribe before you guys leave. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.